Spiritual Manthan.
No one likes to be alone, right? There's this odd, unspoken belief that being alone is somehow wrong, or that it reflects something sad or incomplete about us. But here's the twist: almost every single one of us has experienced loneliness, even when surrounded by people we care about. Strange, isn't it? That ache in your chest, like a weight pressing down when you're all by yourself, can be powerful. It makes you long for someone to be there, someone to share those quiet moments with. But sometimes, even in the company of loved ones, that ache doesn't go away. So what does that tell us? Loneliness isn't really about being alone, is it? It's about the discomfort of facing ourselves. Think of it this way: when we're alone, we're forced to sit with our own thoughts, feelings, and insecurities. It's like holding a mirror up and seeing parts of ourselves we might not be ready to face. That's the true discomfort, the true source of loneliness. Instead of trying to run away from this feeling by filling it with people, social media, or distractions, what if we embraced it? What if we could find peace in our own company and see solitude not as something to avoid, but as an opportunity to connect with our deeper selves? Imagine solitude as a friend, someone there to teach you, to reveal insights about who you really are. When we shift our perspective this way, the idea of being alone stops being something to fear and becomes a path to growth, resilience, and inner peace. And that's what we're going to dive into today: how to turn loneliness into something powerful, something that strengthens you from within. Let's explore this together. Why we fear being alone. So why does being alone feel so uncomfortable? Why do we feel that ache in our chest, that sense of unease, when we're by ourselves? It all goes back to one fundamental truth: we are wired for connection. Humans are social beings by nature. We're built to seek out companionship and to find comfort in others. Since we were young, we've depended on the warmth and support of others: our parents, friends, even strangers who show us kindness. In a way, our relationships act like a cushion, absorbing our worries, our loneliness, and sometimes even our insecurities. We look to others to help us feel complete, to validate our worth. But here's where it gets tricky. When we rely too much on others for that sense of comfort, we create a dependency that leads to emptiness. It's almost like pouring water into a cup with a hole at the bottom. No matter how much you pour in, it's never enough. The more we depend on others to fill that void, the more we feel a sense of lacking when they aren't around. This is why loneliness creeps in, even when we're surrounded by people. It's a void that can't be filled externally, because it's actually an internal discomfort, a discomfort with our own selves. We're afraid of being alone because it forces us to confront the parts of ourselves we may not fully understand or even like. The power of solitude. Imagine solitude as a friend who's been waiting to meet you. A friend who wants nothing more than to help you tune into the quiet, beautiful parts of yourself. Often, when we think of alone time, it feels like something to endure, a period to get through until we're back with others. But solitude is different when you approach it with a sense of curiosity and openness. It's a chance to step away from the noise, from the constant demands of relationships, responsibilities, and expectations. It's like having a blank canvas and the freedom to create whatever you want on it. Think of solitude as a date with yourself. Just as you'd want to get to know someone on a date, listen to them, understand them, maybe even laugh with them, solitude invites you to do the same with yourself. It's a chance to ask, what do I want? What truly makes me happy? Without the influence of others. When you're in solitude, you're free to explore your own thoughts, your dreams, and your fears without any judgment or interference. But let's be real at first. Solitude can feel strange, even a bit uncomfortable. Our culture is so focused on productivity and social connection that sitting in silence feels almost unnatural. Yet, in that silence, there's a kind of magic. As you sit with your own thoughts, and allow yourself to truly be present, you start to hear a softer, truer voice, the one that knows what really matters to you, the one that's been buried under layers of outside opinions and expectations. Society's obsession with never being alone. Everywhere we look, there's a message screaming at us. Don't be alone. Social media shows us images of happy groups of friends, couples in love, families sharing joyful moments. It's as if being alone is a sign of failure, something to be fixed or escaped. Society has an obsession with togetherness, and while connection is wonderful, it creates a pressure to always be surrounded by people. It's easy to start thinking that happiness is directly tied to the number of people in our lives, the quality of our social circles, or the status of our relationships. This cultural obsession with constant company makes being alone feel like a negative experience. When everyone around us seems to have their squad goals or relationship goals, it can feel like something is missing if we're on our own. But here's the thing, being alone is not a problem. It's actually a powerful opportunity for growth, for self-discovery, and for building emotional resilience. When you learn to be okay with being alone, you become more self-reliant, more grounded in who you are. Think of it as an emotional workout. Just as you build muscles by lifting weights, you build inner strength by spending time with yourself. This strength doesn't come from social validation or the presence of others. It comes from within. The world is always going to push the idea that you need someone else to be complete. But true wholeness is something only you can cultivate. The myths about loneliness. One of the biggest myths about loneliness is that it only happens when you're physically alone. But here's the reality. Some of the loneliest moments happen in a crowded room or surrounded by friends. You could be sitting at a table with people laughing and talking around you, yet still feel that hollow emptiness inside. This is because loneliness is less about the absence of people and more about the lack of meaningful connection, especially the connection you have with yourself. Imagine loneliness as an echo in a canyon. You shout, but only your own voice comes back. That echo is like the gap between you and the parts of yourself you may not fully understand. When we don't have a solid foundation within ourselves, every interaction can feel like a temporary fix, but never truly satisfying. It's like trying to build a house on shaky ground. It may hold up for a while, but eventually the cracks start to show. The solution isn't to keep seeking people to fill that gap. Instead, it's to build a stronger connection with yourself. When you're comfortable with who you are, you don't rely on others to make you feel whole. This doesn't mean isolating yourself or rejecting relationships. It means approaching them from a place of fullness rather than need. You bring your whole, authentic self to the table, rather than a version of you seeking validation or approval. Why expectations lead to disappointment? Expectations can be tricky. We all have them, whether we realize it or not. We expect friends to check in, family to understand, and partners to make us feel loved. But what happens when those expectations aren't met? We feel disappointed, sometimes even hurt. It's natural, right? But here's the thing, the more we expect from others, the more we set ourselves up for heartache. As Shakespeare wisely said, expectation is the root of all heartache. Think about it. How often have you done something nice for someone, hoping they'd return the favor, only to feel let down when they didn't? It's like giving someone a gift with invisible strings attached, and when they don't respond the way you hoped, it feels like a betrayal. But was it really? Or was it our own expectations that created that feeling of disappointment? When you rely on others to make you happy, you place an unfair burden on them and, ultimately, set yourself up for disappointment. This doesn't mean you shouldn't care about others or do kind things. It means letting go of the idea that others are responsible for your happiness. Imagine happiness as a fire inside you. It can be fueled by others, but should never depend on them. How to embrace being alone. Embracing solitude is a journey, a process that begins with small steps and a willingness to step outside your comfort zone. For many of us, the idea of being alone can feel intimidating, even daunting. But what if you thought of alone time as a unique opportunity to build a relationship with yourself? Just like you would with a friend or partner, you can start small, doing things you enjoy, but this time doing them just for you. Start with something simple, like taking yourself out on a solo date. Maybe you've always wanted to try that new cafe down the street, or there's a park you've been meaning to visit. Go ahead, treat yourself. Notice how it feels to enjoy something solely for your own pleasure, without needing anyone else's approval or company. You'll likely feel a bit awkward at first. That's normal. But with each experience, that awkwardness will transform into comfort and, eventually, joy. Another powerful way to embrace being alone is by exploring your interests. Are there things you've always wanted to do but felt held back by fear or doubt? Maybe it's painting, cooking, or learning a new language. Use your alone time to explore these passions. When you're focused on something you love, loneliness fades away, replaced by a sense of fulfillment and satisfaction that comes from within. Happiness is an inside job. There's a famous saying, happiness is an inside job. But what does that really mean? It means that true happiness isn't something we can find in external things or other people. It's something we create within ourselves. Imagine happiness as a garden. You are the gardener, responsible for planting, nurturing, and tending to it. Sure, others can add beauty to this garden, like flowers blooming in the sunlight, but the soil, the roots, and the care are all yours. When we look to others to make us happy, we're essentially giving them the keys to our well-being. If they're there, we feel good. But what happens when they aren't? We're left with an emptiness that no one but ourselves can truly fill. That's why happiness must start from within, as something we cultivate by accepting, loving, and honoring who we are. It doesn't mean we don't enjoy the company of others. It means we don't rely on them to feel complete. Think about it this way. If you enter a relationship or friendship from a place of wholeness, you're bringing a complete person to the table. There are no gaps for others to fill, no expectations that they need to complete you. Instead, you share your happiness with them, and they share theirs with you. It's a beautiful exchange rather than a dependency. This mindset shift doesn't happen overnight. It's a practice of looking inward, identifying what truly brings you joy, and doing those things simply because they make you feel alive. Whether it's spending time on a hobby, meditating, or taking time to reflect, nurturing your inner happiness allows you to be content on your own. When you achieve this, solitude becomes a peaceful, fulfilling experience because you're happy with who you are. Breaking free from the cycle of dependency. Dependency often stems from a fear of facing life alone, from a belief that we need others to save us from discomfort or sadness. We get so used to leaning on others that we forget our own strength, our own capacity to handle life's ups and downs. This kind of dependency is like a chain. It holds us back from experiencing our full potential and keeps us trapped in a cycle of relying on others for our well-being. Imagine you're the main character in a movie, and everyone else in your life is a supporting role. You're the hero, the one who must ultimately find your way. While the supporting characters are important, they aren't there to live your life for you. They're there to help, to support, but not to take responsibility for your happiness or fulfillment. Breaking free from dependency means stepping fully into that role of main character, realizing that you are capable of guiding yourself. It's not about rejecting relationships or cutting off connections. It's about shifting from need to want. When you depend on others, you're giving away your power. When you embrace being okay on your own, you regain that power. You start to build a relationship with yourself that's independent of anyone else's presence. You're okay because you've got you. So, here we are. Back to the core question. What does it mean to be okay with being by yourself? It means finding strength in solitude, embracing it as a part of life, rather than something to run away from. When you learn to be your own friend, to enjoy your own company, and to support yourself emotionally, solitude transforms. It no longer feels like loneliness. It feels like freedom, peace, and self-discovery. Imagine reaching a point where being alone is no longer a struggle, where you look forward to your quiet moments because they're a chance to recharge, reflect, and reconnect with yourself. Think of it as being your own anchor, solid and unwavering, even when everything around you is in constant motion. When you're anchored in who you are, solitude doesn't make you feel isolated. It makes you feel whole. This journey of finding strength in solitude isn't always easy. There will be times when loneliness tries to creep in, when the ache of wanting someone else's presence feels overwhelming. But in those moments, remind yourself that you are enough, that you are capable of being your own source of happiness and peace. Solitude is a gift, a chance to become the person you were always meant to be. So next time you feel that familiar ache in your chest, take a deep breath and remember, you are not alone. You have yourself, and that is more powerful than anything else. Embrace your own company. Let solitude become your sanctuary, and watch as you discover a strength you never knew existed. Thank you for being here with me today. If this message resonated with you, leave a comment or share a personal story. Until next time, remember, happiness starts from within.